So today we are sitting here in the Niagara Escarpment UNESCO Biosphere Reserve on the edge of the Brock University campus here in Niagara with Dr. Liette Vasseur. Before we begin today, I'd just like to start with a land acknowledgement. We gratefully acknowledge that we are on the lands that have been inhabited by Indigenous peoples for millennia. As Canadians, we are thankful for the opportunity to live, work, and play here. We honor and uphold the first environmental agreement, the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement, and we thank all who have served and continue to share as stewards of this special place. So thank you for joining me today, Dr. Vasseur. In the course Building Sustainable Communities, the Impact of Engagement, students will be learning about the key foundations and concepts that are key to building sustainable communities, with a focus on the impact of engagement. This includes topics such as community engagement, information gathering and sharing, collaboration, and monitoring and evaluation. As a distinguished scientist and researcher, we are thrilled to hear some of your insights into these concepts and about the work that you do. So to begin, could you just introduce yourself and the research work that you do that is focused on sustainable community building?
Yes, great. As I said, my name is Liette Vasseur. I'm here in the Department of Biological Sciences and as well as in the Environmental Sustainability Research Center. And so sharing my position in some way between two faculties, which I certainly enjoy as a UNESCO chair on community sustainability from local to global. Very busy with also being involved with UNESCO, so the United Nations scientific, educational, cultural organization. In terms of being the president of the Canadian Commission for UNESCO, as well as since recently the deputy chair of the Commission on Ecosystem Management at the International Union for Conservation of Nature. And that really brings me a lot to the idea of the importance of community engagement at different levels and in different countries.
For sure, that's so interesting, and your new position sounds really exciting. So thanks so much. I'd like to start off with asking you, what in your opinion is a sustainable community, or what makes a community sustainable?
I would say that to be sustainable, a community should think about, first of all, inclusion. Inclusion in terms of all diversities, and diversities, I put it that way because it's in terms of the social human aspect. So different underrepresented groups, represented groups, indigenous people, black people, LGBTQ2S+, etc. And we have to really embrace the fact that we are a multicultural, multilingual country, and we have to celebrate it at the community level. In addition, we have to realize that we have also a diversity of possible economic activities. So it's not just one activity that the community has, there are many activities, and I think we have to also embrace the importance of having diversity at this level. And finally, we have to embrace the diversity at the ecological sense. So that means that we can really benefit from the different type of ecosystem that we have and how much they provide. And you know, we're always talking about nature contribution to people.
That's true. That's really true. And I love the idea of the focus on diversity and inclusion. It's something that we've tried to do throughout this course, and just recognizing the diversity of ideas is needed and required for the challenges that we're facing. Thanks so much. So you have held the UNESCO Chair on Community Sustainability from local to global, which you noted earlier, at Brock University since 2014. Can you tell us a bit more about this position and what goals you've accomplished through this position over the past 7 years, which I know there's plenty, and then what you still hope to accomplish going forward in your position?
First, UNESCO Chair has 3 mandates. So the first one is research, the second one being education, and the third one being outreach. So in terms of research, my research has been, I put it as a triangle between sustainable agriculture, sustainable communities, especially rural and coastal communities, and the issue of climate change. And in between all these 3 pillars, I have the issue of inclusion, diversity, equity at the middle. So what happened is my projects have been in China, especially in sustainable agriculture, but in Ecuador, with sustainable communities dealing with the issue of trying to have a sustainable agricultural system, the possibility to deal with climate change, especially when I look at the Chimborazo, which is one of the poorest regions in Ecuador, where the Chimborazo glaciers are melting and 30% less water is coming out, bring really challenges at this level. And more recently, working in West Africa on food security and gender and woman-man relationship, especially during the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic. So in all cases, it relates to community, it relates to food security, agriculture, as well as climate change as a combination of issues that can make a community sustainable or not. So this is at the research level. Education, but I've been promoting education at different levels through supporting the Sustainability Science Society program, as well as developing more and more courses and other modules now on the Sustainable Development Goals, as well as helping with the IUCN, the International Union, on academy with nature-based solution and other components. And finally, the outreach is that I strongly believe that for a researcher, we have to be engaged. And to be engaged is not just a question of dissemination of our peer-reviewed papers, but it's really to be able to bring different ways to communicate to the community, to explain, because we are often talking with a scientific jargon that they don't understand. So this is why with the Mayo-Power project in Lincoln, we had the blogs that are helping people. And I should say, I don't know how many citizens came to see me after that. Hey, can you help me? Can you help me? I've been amazed. But it also led to having the same thing now in Baie Saint Paul in Quebec, doing the same thing with the farmers communities. So it's really amplifying at different level to the point that I've been asked quite a lot to help on these things. And at the same time, producing, especially in the past year, policy briefs for iPolitics, for example, so that we can also educate the elected people and the bureaucrats that are either at the federal or provincial level. So outreach is at different places, and it's super important, especially this year, that in a couple of weeks, UNESCO will adopt, the parties of UNESCO will adopt the recommendation on open science. So that means everybody has the right to have the information.
Yeah, that's so interesting. A large part of this course, or Module 2 specifically, is focused on knowledge mobilization and knowledge translation. So thank you for that. And honestly, you're one of those people who never says no. So when we're reaching out and we say, hey, will you do an interview with us? You're always there to say yes. So I can't imagine how many outreach pieces you've done over the past 7 years. Okay, so for question 3, why is engaging with communities important for building sustainable communities? You've kind of spoken to this over several examples you've given, but I don't know if you want to focus on one or...
Yeah, but I think the reason is that, as I said before, we have this jargon in science that makes it very inaccessible for the general public. And so we have to really, knowledge about mobilization has become more and more important in my life, just because I realized very quickly with working with Lincoln, working with many other communities, that you have to be your 2 feet on the ground there. You have to talk to people. They have to tell you what is needed, and they have also to receive the information, but in a way that it's accessible, not simplified to become really too simplistic, but really simplified so that they can understand. And it's very simple, working especially this fall because of climate change and all that, and have been interviewed quite a lot. And we just had with Radio-Canada last week a special emission show on that, is the importance of making sure people understand the terminology. It's simple, like even just greenhouse gas emissions. We think that everybody knows what it means, which is not true. So when we talk about climate change, it's the same, and it's the same for many other terminology that we're using. So we need to really explain, and we need to explain the why. Why do we need to do something? And the best example for me when I started doing that in Ecuador, in the Chimborazo, is when Pedro, who is the chief of the village, came on the chalkboard where we were putting a lot of things and suddenly said to me and to the group, this is great to have this project because this is for, by, and with the community. So at that point, you know that you have the engagement of the community as well, and that they will want to work for all together to find solution and to be able to bring new ideas and alternative that is for climate change, that is for adaptation to climate change, this is for new way of doing sustainable agriculture, etc. So we really need to be open. Transparency is super important at that point, especially from the scientists. And we have to remember to avoid any type of what I call helicopter research, that you go there, you take the data and you go back. You never go back. You have to go back. You have to put an engagement on yourself with that community as well. It's a bit harder, I should say, in the past year with COVID, but that's for sure that this is the way that we have to keep going. It's demanding, and one thing that I always say, any type of community engagement and community-based research, it takes time. It's not something that you do very quickly, and if you work with indigenous communities like I do, it's even more important. You take time and you respect the cultures where you're working. That's the important part too.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And I love that it all came back really to that idea of inclusivity, even in your research, right? Yeah. And that's how one of those pieces that we need to focus on when we're looking at sustainable community building, and to make sure that when you're, working towards that you understand what the community thinks is also sustainable, that it's not just your thoughts of what a sustainable community looks like.
Yeah, but we always talk about not just the wants. We have to talk about the needs, and that's the important part too.
And understanding what their needs are.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Vasseur. I can't thank you enough for taking the time to speak with me today and sharing your expertise and insights with our students that are going to be taking this course.
Great. Well, you're welcome, and I'm hoping a lot of students will get engaged in these kind of communication.
For sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.